Welcome back to another episode of Innovation Minutes Live. This week, we're talking about workshops and why they sometimes work and why they sometimes don't work.
Yeah, the chances are most people that work in a large organization are involved with and participate in a workshop at some point. They're often off-site. They're often sort of time out of your usual business as usual day. They often bring in outside facilitators, possibly people like us. They may be slightly more creative. They may be addressing a particular problem. But whatever form they take, and we've experienced this firsthand as well, they are met with varying degrees of success. And I think it's easy to just say, oh, well, workshops don't work for us, or they're not productive, or, you reflect and you say, we didn't get anything out of it. It must be workshops that are the problem. And I don't think that's the full picture of it.
Yeah, and it's funny, often the impetus for running a workshop is kind of a very long, slow-moving chain reaction of events and different things that have happened to drive somebody towards that decision point of saying, hey, maybe it would help if we had a workshop. And that's usually at the point when things are very broken or there's a significant problem that has to be solved that requires everybody in the same room, that sometimes requires outside thinking and outside, thoughts and frameworks and things like that. But it's usually at the point when there's a need within the organization that can't be fulfilled in a typical business as usual kind of way.
And I think one of the traps of coming to something like a workshop when you're already at a point of desperation and you have this huge heavy lift that needs to happen, there's a real sense of urgency, and there's an unrealistic expectation that that day or those 2 days are going to turn this ship around and be the panacea that's going to magically heal everything and put you, sailing off into the sunset. And the more realistic way of looking at it is, it's not just the workshop in and of itself, but it's how you engage with it, the mindset you bring, how present you are, all these sort of nuances, not just the facilitators, not just, the objective, but also what happens after the workshop is really, really huge. It's a springboard. It's not just the end in itself.
Yeah, and I mean, nobody's ever said, "Hey, things are going amazing. Let's have a workshop." Right?
Right.
That rarely, if ever, happens. In most organizations, I would say there's probably some highly functional organizations that
Do them regularly.
have these types of
Yeah.
activities on an ongoing basis, but they don't call them workshops, right? They just call it doing work, right? That's how their organization works. So, it's important to draw that distinction where, when it's triage mode, it's typically called a workshop. When it's working, then it's just part of your process or whatever it is that you call it. No, but it's, like you said, it's the it being part of a continuum is the important piece that I think a lot of companies miss, because when you have the triage workshop and you satiate that need, or you fulfill whatever requirements you laid out to take care of during the workshop, that kind of eases the pain a little bit, and things typically go back to business as usual, checking email and doing the things you normally do.
Well, and sometimes it takes stepping outside of your everyday life and the way you operate and the work that you're doing where you're really close to it, to be able to get some perspective and see a clearer path for moving forward. And so, I think that's really our approach in our innovation audit workshop, is
Right.
that we don't come in saying we know what you need, nor do they necessarily know what they need. But through that process of discovery, they're able to get greater perspective, and we're able to more fully identify in a customized way exactly what they're in need of and what a realistic time frame and approach would be moving forward. And I think trying to come in and just throw things at them, or have them say, just kind of hypothesize, this is what we should do, that's not generally very effective. You need to give yourself that space, that opportunity for discovery, and then come to the next steps.
Yeah, and as far as outlining the next steps, that needs to be bought in by the entire team, right? Not just an external facilitator, not just an internal team, but the entire group discussing, whatever it is they're discussing. A part of that discussion also needs to be what happens after, what needs to happen before, because if this is just a one-off event, like so many people have experienced, like we have, like the people we work with have experienced, it's great. You feel good for 2 days, and then you go back to doing whatever it was that you're doing. So, to get the most out of it, there needs to be an active and honest conversation about what realistically can happen within the confines of the organization, inside existing process models and rules,
Yeah.
and along with all the other responsibilities that everybody else has, and talk about just pragmatically what are some little steps that we can take to start doing this in a more ad hoc way, where it's not necessarily a formal workshop, or maybe that happens a couple times a year, but these little things that happen in between the
Mhm.
offsites or the workshops or the week-long, innovation boot camps, whatever they are, to kind of bridge those things together.
Yeah, and it's a process. I think this is something that's really hard for a lot of teams to accept, in that there's so much pressure for them to deliver on specific metrics each quarter,
Yeah.
and that inevitably dominates their thinking and the way that they choose to proceed. And oftentimes that is at the detriment of what would actually work out and be more beneficial for them longer term. So it's a real dance in keeping in mind and developing a strategy going forward that's both going to help them meet or come close to meeting those immediate goals, while also keeping an eye on where the larger future of this sector or their company is heading, and looking at those bigger trends.
Yeah, and that's also a critical piece, right? Because if you're just thinking about the next month's deliverables or this quarter's deliverables, then assuming that your job is to also kind of keep a vision towards the horizon in the future, how do you plan for today when you don't know what's around the corner next year? It's
And
it's tough.
that's the kind of thing where workshops become really useful, because if you always have your work and your process right up here, it becomes very myopic. And so you have to step back, and stepping out of that everyday hustle, whether it's getting you off site, whether it's bringing in fresh blood and new ideas that challenge your assumptions, whatever it is, the
Mhm.
workshop format is really the best we've discovered that is able to create that path for going forward. It's,
Yeah.
again, it's the springboard for the way work can get done, and new ideas. It's not the thing in itself. It's not what is delivering everything you're going to need for the next year. And I think once people learn to understand the role of the workshop,
Yeah.
and how they themselves need to show up for it, it becomes a really positive, useful tool for almost every organization.
Yeah, yep, totally agree. So we'd love to hear what you think. Feel free to find us in the comments or shoot us an email, visit our site. We'd love to hear how your organization embraces or doesn't embrace workshops, if they've worked for you, if they haven't worked for you. So find us in the comments, and we'll see you next week.